Hi, I'm Lynn Morgan, your slipper-shod pastor. From time to time over the years, I have been encountered by young couples with child in hand or child on lap or child in arms. And they come to me and say, Pastor, well, we haven't been terribly active in church for these past few years, but now that we've started a family, you're going to see more of us. And in fact, we would like to register these little ones in the Sunday school. And the reason they often give for doing that is that they want to give their children a strong moral foundation as they grow up. And of course, I am tickled pink to hear this news from them. And I endorse their motives, and of course I sign them up, and I try not to dance visibly as I'm doing so with great glee. But if I were completely honest with that couple, I probably should take a moment to say that although the church life of worship and study and service will indeed shape us ethically and morally, it ought to make us people who are more fully offering ourselves to God in love and loving our neighbor as ourselves. Although all that is true, the church's fundamental purpose is not as a moral teacher, as one who is announcing a system of ethics and trying to inculcate that in its members, young or old. Fundamentally, ethics are a side effect of what the church is about. Church is about a faith-filled relationship with God, which will change us from stem to stern and should have impact on the way we live our life, but it begins and ends, really, in entrusting oneself to God. It is not about trying to become better people, trying to shape people according to a particular ethical standard or set of morals. It is about people who, in all of our states of brokenness or ethical perfection, need to offer ourselves to God, to trust our lives to God, and to render ourselves to God as servants. That's what we're about. Believing the good news that even when we are ethically imperfect, as we always are, God loves us and embraces us, uses us, and shapes us. I've been reading recently in the book of Joshua, and that story of the beginning of Joshua is filled with wonderful, exciting stories that we tell our kids in Sunday school. But let me tell you, they are not filled with moral exemplars. In fact, quite the opposite. At the beginning of the book of Joshua, Joshua, who now has taken over the mantle of leadership from Moses, sends out spies into the land that they are about to try to conquer from the Canaanites. And one of the first places they go to is that great walled city of Jericho. Now, we've read ahead, and we know that them walls are going to come a-tumbling down. But at the time, all Israel knew was that they better understand just how well fortified those walls are and what was behind those walls. How many soldiers? What kind of supplies? How could they possibly hope to lay siege to this walled city that lay in their path as they sought to conquer Canaan? And so Joshua did the logical thing. He sent out spies, and they made their way into the city as spies. And where did they lodge in the city? Oh, you know the story. That's right, they lodged in a brothel. And there they were given cover by Rahab, who was a prostitute, who worked in that brothel, who perhaps owned the brothel. And she hid them out, and she lied about where they were, said that they had left previously. And then when night fell, because her brothel happened to be a house that was built into the wall itself, it had a window that opened on the wall, and she let them out by a rope, and they shimmied their way down. And so it's a wonderful story, and we always tell it to Sunday school kids because it's like a movie plot. It's just an action-adventure story. And we just tell it to kids willy-nilly, and they're tickled to hear it. And we almost never raise any of the moral issues, like, these people are spying, just so they're living a life of deceit. Now, we like our own spies because they do things for us, but we don't like spying as a moral quality in anyone because it is a deceitful thing. And we endorse the fact that they're hiding out in Jericho. And we say not a word about why they're in the brothel. And don't believe for a moment that they went to the brothel because the Holiday Inn was full. They went to the brothel because their young men sent out as spies. And it was a place to go, and they knew what to do when they got there. And Rahab, we consider her to be a great hero of Israel, and indeed she is. But she's a prostitute, and she's a turncoat, and she's a liar. You see, this story is not about teaching us how to be ethical and moral. It's a story that endorses all the actors in it because they were used of God. They gave themselves over for God's purposes. And because of their faithfulness and their courage, well, the purposes of God were advanced, and Jericho indeed did fall. So, what do we make of all this? Not that ethics don't matter, not that morality isn't important, but that the crucial thing is that we trust in God, that we give our lives over to God and allow God to use us, the imperfect vessels that we are, that even in our ethical failures, God can work in our lives to do great things. And that, my friends, is good news.